A young intern walked into the interview, covered in mud. What the millionaire CEO did next shocked everyone. The moment the glass doors of the interview room opened, a profound silence rippled through the space. It was like a pin dropping in a cathedral. Heads turned in synchronized disbelief. Conversations died mid-sentence. All eyes fixed on the doorway. A young woman stepped inside. Her presence was more shocking than any storm. Maya, 23, stood dripping on the threshold. Her once white blouse clung to her skin, soaked through by the rain. Her black skirt was streaked with mud. Her sensible flats squelched audibly with each step. Her dark hair, normally tied neatly in a bun, hung wet and tangled around her cheeks. A few people whispered. Others didn't bother to lower their voices. Is she lost? Someone scoffed. She's here to interview. Like that? Another said, half laughing. The panel of interviewers at the long glass table exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them, a woman in a pristine gray suit, leaned toward her microphone. She spoke in a clipped, sharp tone. Miss Maya Thompson. Maya nodded, clutching her plastic folder tightly. Though her hands were trembling, her voice was steady. Yes, that's me. She walked toward the only empty seat. It was among a group of sharp, polished candidates. Each of them looked like they had stepped out of a business magazine. Tailored suits, glossy resumes, perfect smiles. They suddenly shifted away as she passed, as if her very presence might smear them, too. At the head of the room sat a man in a dark navy suit. He was sharp-jawed, his expression unreadable. His hair was perfectly in place, his posture ramrod straight. He did not whisper or stare. He simply watched her with unnerving focus. His name tag read Aidan Blackwood, CEO. Maya sat down, placing her wet folder carefully on her lap. She could feel the heat of judgment in the room. She could feel the mud drying uncomfortably against her legs. But she did not shrink. A long, tense silence followed. The woman at the mic cleared her throat. Miss Thompson, you were scheduled for 9:00 a.m. It is now 9:27. I know, Maya said. Another pause. The silence this time was sharper, filled with tension. It was the CEO who broke it. His voice was smooth and unhurried. Would you care to explain why you are late, and why you appear to have come straight from crawling through a construction site? There was no sarcasm in his tone, no humor. Just a precise, direct question. Maya stood up slowly. Her knees ached from the fall earlier. Her shoulders were still trembling from the cold. But her voice did not waver. No, I don't look the part, she said clearly, meeting every eye that dared to judge her. But I believe showing up matters more than showing off. She let her words settle in the room. I left my apartment at 5:30 this morning. I planned my route, ironed my clothes, and printed my resume at the public library because I don't own a printer. Everything was ready. But on my way here, I saw a homeless man slip and fall trying to cross a flooded street. People just passed him by. I stopped. I helped him to safety, gave him my umbrella, and made sure he could stand. I missed my bus. I ran the rest of the way. I slipped, and I kept running. The room was dead silent. I knew what I'd look like walking into this room. Maya continued, her voice steadier now. But I also knew if I turned around, I'd be walking away from a chance I've worked years to earn. She opened her folder slowly. She revealed a pristine resume, dry and perfectly aligned on crisp paper. "I protected the one thing that matters here," she said. "My work." The CEO watched her. His expression did not change. He sat with his hands steepled in front of his lips, unreadable. But there was a flicker in his eyes, quick, controlled. No one said a word. Maya sat back down. Somewhere behind the muttering of disbelief and the shifting of papers, something had changed. The air was no longer full of mockery. It was full of consideration. In the quiet that followed Aiden, Blackwood looked at the resume she had just placed on the table. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply nodded once and turned the page. The interview continued, but the room was not the same, and neither was Maya. 4 hours earlier, the alarm buzzed at 5 a.m. Maya's eyes opened in the dark, her heart already pounding. She lay still for a second, letting the weight of the day settle into her chest. This was it. The interview. The one chance she had to leave behind waitressing shifts, late, rent, and the endless loop of survival. She got up in the tiny studio she called home. The heater was broken again, so she rubbed her arms for warmth as she dressed carefully. A clean white blouse, neatly ironed the night before. A simple black skirt. Shoes polished with the last few drops of conditioner she'd read. Somewhere it worked in a pinch. She double-checked her backpack. Her resume, freshly printed at the public library, was safely tucked inside a large Ziploc bag. The edges were sharp, the font clean. She didn't have experience at big firms, but she had grades, grit, and a side project she was proud of. A campaign proposal she had designed for a local nonprofit. Her umbrella was frayed, but it held. She stepped out into the morning. Rain, the city gray and glistening. The sidewalk was slick, the gutters already swelling. She was 5 minutes ahead of schedule. A small smile crept onto her lips. She turned the corner near the Tata underpass, heading toward the main road and the bus stop. That was when she saw him. An old man, soaked to the bone, hunched over on the sidewalk. His grocery bag had split open, oranges rolling into the gutter. One arm cradled his ribs. He had fallen, and no one was stopping. Maya's steps slowed. People passed him. Some glanced. Most didn't. A woman in heels pulled her coat tighter and crossed to the other side of the street. Maya looked at her watch. 6:14. The bus came at 6:20. The stop was 2 blocks away. She exhaled sharply, closed her umbrella, and ran to him. "Sir," she said gently, kneeling beside him. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" He winced, coughing. "My hip. I slipped. Can you move a little?" She gathered the oranges quickly, shoving them into her tote bag. Her hands were wet and trembling. She took off her coat, wrapped it around his shoulders, and helped him sit against the brick wall of a closed storefront. A nearby coffee shop had just opened. She flagged down the barista, through the glass, explained, quickly, and got them to bring out a warm towel and a chair. 10 minutes passed. The old man was safe now, sipping warm tea. Maya gave him her umbrella, jotting down her number in case he needed help later. She checked the time. 6 to 7. The bus was gone. "Thank you," the old man said, his voice raspy. Most people just walked by. Maya smiled, though her heart raced. "You're welcome. Take care, okay?" Then she ran. The rain was heavier now. She darted across intersections and dodged puddles, but the streets were dangerously slick. As she turned down a side alley and took a shortcut she had used once before, her foot slipped on a slick patch of mud. She hit the ground hard. Her skirt and blouse were soaked, brown with grime. Her knees were scraped, her palms stung. But the first thing she did was check her backpack. She unzipped it, her fingers trembling. The Ziploc bag was intact. The resume was dry. She clutched it to her chest, stood up slowly, and started running again. Her breath fogged in the cold, her legs burned, but she ran. The building finally appeared, ahead, glass and steel towering over her like a monument to judgment. She had lost time, she knew, but she wasn't going to lose this chance. Covered in mud, shivering, but holding her work tight against her chest, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. She stepped into the lobby, every step leaving a wet print behind, and she didn't look back. The last of the applicants filed out of the conference room. Some exchanged quiet congratulations. Others were already pulling out, their phones to call someone, parents, friends, mentors. Maya remained seated, damp and drying slowly under the room's central air. Her resume folder now rested on the table like a silent witness to the chaos of her morning. Across the room, the panel of interviewers gathered their notes. Most glanced at her with vague politeness, some with subtle pity. But Aidan Blackwood, CEO of the company, said nothing. He flipped through the stack of resumes in front of him, stopping at hers. He held it for a moment longer than the rest. "Maya Thompson," he said, coolly. "A moment, please." A quiet hush fell over the room as the other panelists filed out, whispering politely among themselves. Maya stood slowly, her skirt still stiff with dried mud. She followed Aidan through a side door into a smaller, glass-walled office. It was minimalist, clean lines, leather chairs, a single-framed photo of a mountain peak on the far wall. The view behind his desk looked out over half the city. He did not offer her a seat. He didn't sit either. He turned, resume in one hand, his eyes focused like a scalpel. "Reviewed your project," he said, his voice steady. "Your proposed community engagement campaign for nonprofits is impressive. Your analysis is sharp. Your visuals are compelling. Clearly, you're talented." Maya's shoulders lifted slightly. She clasped her hands behind her, back, hope flickering like a match. Then he looked up, and the spark died. "But you were late." She blinked. "Yes, sir." He raised a hand, stopping her, mid-sentence. "Punctuality is not optional here, Miss Thompson. We value time," efficiency, and control. You were 27 minutes late to a scheduled interview. I understand, but he cut in again, his tone unchanging. You had one opportunity to show us how seriously you take this. You showed up late and drenched. Regardless of your intentions, that choice has consequences. Maya inhaled carefully, the tension tightening around her ribs. I didn't choose to be late, she said, trying to keep her voice even. I stopped to help someone. An elderly man, he fell. I couldn't just walk away. His expression didn't shift. This is not a volunteer organization. It's a corporation. So, even helping someone in need is unprofessional now. Her voice sharpened, not loud, but piercing. Is that the culture you lead? Hayden's eyes narrowed slightly. The air between them thickened. This is a business, he said, slow and deliberate. We do not run on excuses. We run on results. Maya's heart pounded, but she refused to look away. Maybe if more businesses ran on humanity, they'd be better at both. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The room was still. The hum of city traffic buzzed faintly behind the thick glass walls. He studied her, not with anger, but with something more complex. Curiosity. Challenge. You're not like the others, he finally said. Because I showed up muddy? No, he said. Because you spoke up. Maya didn't answer. He looked down at her resume again, then set it carefully on his desk. I haven't made my final decisions yet, he said. But if you want to be here, you'll need to learn the difference between heart and habit. And you'll need to show me that you can deliver. Maya's jaw tightened. I can deliver, just not at the expense of what I stand for. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost, but not quite, a smirk. Then we'll see if you're as capable as you are convicted, he said. He stepped aside, motioning toward the door. Thank you for your time. Maya walked past him without another word, her shoes leaving faint prints on the polished floor. As the door clicked shut behind her, Aiden remained still. Hands in his pockets, his eyes lingered on the damp outline her figure had left on the chair she never sat in. He didn't know yet if she belonged, but he did know this. He would not forget her. 3 days after the interview, Maya received the email. She read it once, then again, her breath caught in her chest. Position, marketing intern. Start date, immediate. Assigned to campaign Team C. Approved by Aiden Blackwood, CEO. No explanation, no phone call. Just an HR notice and his name. She leaned back in her chair, stunned. The same man who had coldly reminded her of punctuality now stamped her entry into the company. She didn't understand it, but she wasn't about to question it. Her first day felt quiet on the surface, but the buzz beneath was undeniable. Glances, murmurs, smirks. Isn't that the muddy girl from the lobby? She must have something going on with the CEO. No intern gets that kind of approval. Her direct manager, Olivia Grant, was polite but distant. Tasks were assigned via short emails. Team meetings happened without her being copied in. When Maya spoke up, Olivia would say, "Thanks, Maya, noted," then move on without a second glance. Maya kept her head down. She was used to hard work, And this wasn't the first time she had to earn her place. What she didn't know was that Aidan had seen her that morning. The morning of the interview. Soaked, kneeling beside a homeless man near the street. He had watched quietly from his car. He never said a word about it, but he remembered. And when her name reached the short list after internal review, he didn't interfere. He simply signed off. Let the work speak. Let her prove it. And she did. Maya handled every task thrown her way. Rewriting dull copy, staying after hours to refine presentation decks, even helping other interns behind the scenes. No one gave her a spotlight, so she created one for herself. Then came the Thursday meeting. Campaign Team C was presenting a major holiday project. Olivia led the pitch with smooth slides and recycled taglines. Maya sat quietly at the end of the table, half invited, fully ignored. 5 minutes in, Aidan entered the room. He said nothing, just sat, tablet in hand, his expression unreadable. The pitch continued, safe, predictable. Maya finally raised her voice. May I offer a thought? Olivia paused, reluctant. Go ahead. Maya stood. I've reviewed this campaign, she said. And while it's technically sound, it lacks soul. We're offering familiarity, but not connection. It doesn't give people a reason to care. Olivia folded her arms. We're in the business of results, not poetry. It's more expensive to be ignored than to take a risk, Maya replied. Aidan spoke calmly. Go on, she laid out a brief concept, one built around real moments, raw emotions, and the kind of imperfection that felt human. People leaned forward. Someone started taking notes. When she finished, the room held its breath. Aidan finally nodded. Submit both versions. We'll let the results speak. As the meeting broke, Maya gathered her things, her heart still racing. She felt the weight of eyes on her. She didn't expect gratitude, but as she neared the door, something made her turn back. Aidan was still seated. And though his expression was still, there it was, the faintest hint of a smile. Not approval, not amusement. Recognition. It didn't take long for the rest of the company to notice. Maya and Aidan disagreed often. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in every meeting where vision met execution. Where creativity met control, their voices clashed. They were like opposite ends of a magnetic field. Maya argued from the heart. She spoke of feeling, of meaning, of the emotional impact campaigns could have on people's lives. She referenced lived experience, stories she'd heard from customers, non-profit clients, even her own upbringing. Aidan countered with data, with performance metrics, financial, forecasts, and risk analysis. He was a fortress of logic, unflinching, disciplined. Where she saw warmth, he saw risk. Where she asked for empathy, he demanded efficiency. Emotion doesn't guarantee a return on investment, he said in one meeting. And cold numbers don't create loyalty, Maya replied, without missing a beat. Some in the room bristled, wondering when she would cross the invisible line of being too bold, but she never did. And Aidan, for all his cold control, never silenced her. In fact, he kept inviting her back. He challenged her views, dissected her suggestions, but never dismissed her. And over time, the edges of his rebuttals softened. He started asking more questions. He listened longer. He even caught himself once referencing one of her analogies in a leadership meeting, then quietly brushed it off. She noticed, and she began to see him, too. Not just the CEO who towered above everyone in crisp suits and timed responses, but the man who stayed late at the office long after the lights dimmed, who reread client emails line by line, who paused at the company's donation wall and stared just a little longer than necessary. He had his own history, she realized, one not printed on the front page of Forbes, one buried deep. Late one Thursday night, Maya was the last to leave the floor. She had offered to rework at the marketing flowchart for an upcoming pitch. The office was nearly silent. The whir of the AC was the only companion to the soft clicks of her keyboard. She sneezed twice. The chill from the vent was getting to her, but she kept working. Around 10:30 p.m., she finally shut, her laptop exhausted and slightly feverish. She stood, rubbing her temples, and noticed something on her desk. A white paper cup, steam still rising from it. She blinked. Ginger tea, slightly sweet with a slice of lemon. No note, no explanation. Just the tea. She looked around. The floor was empty. The next morning, she arrived early. As she stepped off the elevator, Aiden exited the hallway just ahead of her. Their eyes met. He didn't stop, but as he passed, he said so softly it was almost drowned by the elevator's ding, "Hope you're feeling better." Maya stared after him. He didn't turn back. That evening, after another long day, she found herself on the hotel balcony outside the break room. It was the one few people used because of the wind. She needed air, needed quiet. The city stretched out in lights. Before her, the skyline glowing under a pale moon. She didn't hear him approach, but when she looked to her left, Aiden was there. He said nothing, just leaned on the railing beside her. Suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. They stood in silence. The wind tugged gently at Maya's hair. For once, no debate passed between them. No corrections, no tension, just stillness. After a few minutes, Maya said, "You didn't have to leave the tea." "I didn't," Aiden replied, his eyes on the horizon. She smirked. "It was you." He gave the faintest nod. She turned toward him. "Why do you always have to pretend not to care?" He looked at her then, a real look. "Because if I start caring too much," he said, his voice low, "I start losing control." Maya didn't say anything. She understood that more than she wanted to admit. After a long pause, Aiden added, "You challenge me, Maya, in ways no one else does. I could say the same," she said softly. They stood closer now, the air between them heavy. Not with conflict, but with something unspoken. The tension wasn't combative this time. It was electric, quiet, real. Neither reached out. Neither moved away. The city hummed below, indifferent to the way the world had just shifted for two people on a balcony, both too proud to admit what was already beginning. But in their silence, something fragile, bloomed. Not love, not yet. But maybe it was the first moment they truly saw each other. Not as adversaries, but as equals. The storm hit on a Tuesday. It started with a viral post. An anonymous customer sharing screenshots of a failed customer service interaction. It was from one of the company's regional departments. Within hours, hashtags were trending. Accusations piled on. More stories emerged. By midday, the company's brand reputation had plummeted to its lowest rating in years. The headline on every news outlet was the same: Blackwood and Cody's culture crisis. Aiden sat in the glass-walled executive conference room. His jaw was tight, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. The board of directors threw words like daggers: mismanagement, negligence, failure to lead. He didn't flinch, but inside he felt the ground shifting. They wanted him to step down. Temporarily, of course. Public relations demanded distance. Investors wanted a face to blame, and Aiden's was the one on every magazine cover. Behind closed doors, the conversations weren't any better. The marketing team was in disarray. Everyone was scrambling for spin, for deflection, for damage control. Maya, once invited to meetings, was now accidentally left off email chains. Some whispered that she was too close to the top. Others blamed her for influencing Aiden's softer campaign strategies. She knew the tension. She felt it. And so, on a quiet night when most had gone home, she stayed behind. She sat in the break room with a cup of cold coffee and a heart full of fire. She pulled out her laptop, opened a blank document, and started to write. It wasn't a press release. It wasn't an apology. It was a diagnosis and a solution. Maya detailed how the company had drifted from its core values, how the internal communication breakdown had created a gap in customer empathy, and how a targeted, transparent response campaign, not denial, was the only path forward. She wrote with urgency, clarity, and more heart than any analyst could fake. Then she printed it. No name, no title. Just the truth. She slipped it into a plain envelope and left it on the desk, outside Aiden's office, long after he'd gone. The next morning, he found it. He read the memo twice before sunrise. Once as a CEO, once as a man. He knew that voice. It was hers. Later that day, the official statement, released by Blackwood and Co., struck a very different tone than what the board had proposed. It was candid, sincere, and rooted in empathy. It trended not as an apology, but as a lesson in accountability. Within 48 hours, the company's reputation began to stabilize. Clients withdrew their threats to terminate contracts. Influencers reversed their critiques. Aiden returned to meetings quietly, without fanfare. And still Maya heard nothing. By Friday, she had packed her desk. The whispers had taken their toll. The team's icy silence, the isolation. It was enough. She didn't belong in a world where the truth was inconvenient and loyalty was punished. She left her access card on Olivia's desk. But as she stepped into the lobby, the elevator chimed. Aiden stood inside. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at her, at the worn straps on her bag. at the flicker of something almost broken in her eyes. "You're leaving," he said. It wasn't a question. "I don't think I'm needed anymore," she replied, her voice calm but tired. He stepped forward, then held out something in his hand. Her memo, folded, worn at the edges, but intact. "You saved us," Aiden said, his voice lower than she'd ever heard it, "and I'm not letting you walk away." Maya blinked. "You weren't supposed to know it was me." "I did," he said, "the moment I read it. No one else here writes like that. With fire and truth and no regard for ego." She looked away, unsure what to say. He continued, "They wanted spin. You gave us soul." A silence stretched between them. "Then why didn't you say anything?" she asked finally. "Because you don't need validation from me," he replied. "But you do deserve respect. And I should have made sure you got both." Maya stood still, her fingers tightening on the strap of her bag. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not because you owe this place anything, but because this place needs more people like you." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out slowly and took the memo from his hand. Her fingers brushed his. And for the first time since the crisis began, she felt the ground steady again beneath her feet. Whispers were louder than facts. It started subtly. Missed invites to meetings. Maya should have attended. Colder glances in the hallway. Conversations that paused the moment she walked into a room. At first, she tried to ignore it. She kept her head down, worked late, and delivered results. But the murmurs grew there, obviously involved. No one gets the kind of access unless there's something else going on. Did you see the way he looks at her? Worst part wasn't what they said. It was what they didn't. Respect disappeared. Credit faded. Her ideas were met with silence or, worse, passed off by others and repackaged as their own. She was no longer seen as the intern who had helped steady the company in a storm, but as a question mark, a rumor, a liability. Aiden heard the whispers too. He noticed how Maya stopped raising her hand in meetings, how her once fiery tone had quieted, how she lingered by the elevator a few seconds longer, as if deciding if it was even worth going up to her floor. He wanted to step in, but he hesitated, because everything he did now would be seen through the lens of that same rumor. He thought his silence might protect her more than his involvement. He was wrong. One rainy morning, Maya walked into his office. Not timid, not broken, just resolute. "I've requested a transfer," she said. He looked up from his laptop, startled. "To where?" "The Portland branch. They have an opening in campaign strategy." There was a long pause. "You're running," he said quietly. "I'm moving forward," she corrected. "There's a difference." He leaned back in his chair. "Is it what you want?" Maya hesitated. "It's what I need. I came here for a job, but this place, this experience, it taught me more than I expected." He nodded slowly. "If you go, let it be for your dream. Not because people failed to see your worth." She looked at him. Then, and for a moment, the tension between them softened into something almost gentle. I used to think I came here for the job, she said. Now I know I came here to become who I was meant to be. Neither of them spoke for a while. Her departure was scheduled for Friday. Thursday morning, the company lobby buzzed with activity. Teams moved between departments. Executives passed through with coffee and clipped conversations. The space pulsed with the rhythm of business as usual, until Aiden stepped into the center of the lobby. People slowed. Phones dropped. Silence rippled across the marble floor as the CEO, known for his precision and detachment, called for attention. Not through an assistant, not over the intercom, but with his own voice. I want to say something, he began, about someone who's leaving us tomorrow. He looked around the room, his eyes searching until they locked on hers. Maya Thompson came into this company under the worst possible conditions and still rose above every expectation. She worked harder than anyone, contributed ideas that reshaped our brand and helped steer us through a crisis when others looked away, paused. But we failed her. Murmurs flickered through the room. We let assumptions speak louder than merit, he continued. We let whispers drown out truth. And I stood by thinking my silence would protect her. His eyes found hers again. I was wrong. Maya stood at the edge of the crowd, frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. Apologize, Aiden said, his voice firm and clear. Not because of what people said, but because I didn't do enough to shut it down. Maya deserves better than that. From me. From all of us. He stepped back. And in that stillness, something shifted. People began to clap. One by one at first, hesitant, unsure. Then it grew into a wave of recognition. A quiet reckoning. Maya felt her throat tighten. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't expected it. But she needed it. Later that day, she passed Aiden by the elevators. He didn't say a word. He just handed her an envelope. Inside was a single line, handwritten on his personal stationery. If you ever forget who you are, just remember who I saw when no one else did. She folded the note carefully, held it to her chest, and stepped into the elevator. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. 1 year later, Blackwood and Comedy's lobby still gleamed with marble, floors, and polished brass. But something about the place felt different, warmer, less rigid. Not because the walls had changed, but because the people had. And, at the center of it, still, composed in his sharp suit but quieter in his demeanor, was Aiden Blackwood. He listened more now. He asked why before he asked how. He remembered birthdays and smiled more in 6 months than he had in 6 years. Few knew exactly what had shifted him. He did. She had. Maya returned not for a job, but as the director of communications for a major philanthropic foundation. Her first time back was for a charity partnership event hosted by Blackwood and Co. The invitation had come formally, but the pull between them when she stepped into the room was anything but. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom. He paused mid-conversation. She froze, her heart racing. Neither moved, but something undeniable spark to life again. That night, they spoke like old friends who had been waiting years to say what couldn't be said before. Over the following months, their reconnection became more than familiar. It became inevitable. No drama, no rush. They had already done the hard, apart, learning each other's sharpest edges, surviving misunderstanding and silence. Spring came. Aiden asked her to meet him on the rooftop terrace, the very place where their story had once clashed in arguments and tension. But now, string lights glowed softly. The wind was gentle, the sky burned gold with the setting sun. Maya stepped onto the terrace, her heels tapping, her dress catching the breeze. Aiden turned as she approached. "You remember the last time we stood here?" he asked, a soft smile playing on his lips. She smiled back. "You told me empathy was a liability, and you told me data without heart was just noise." They both laughed softly. He looked at her for a long moment, then stepped closer. "You changed me," he said, his voice sincere. "From the day you walked in, muddy and fearless, you made me rethink everything. Everything I thought leadership meant. Everything I thought I had to be." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I believed silence was safe, that control was strength, that letting someone in would cost too much." He opened the box. "But you walked into a room full of doubt and never once blinked. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, honest. So, will you walk into every room beside me for the rest of our lives?" Maya's eyes welled with tears. She nodded slowly, then again, faster. "Yes," she whispered. "Always." The wedding was quiet and intimate. Just family, close friends, and the colleagues who had witnessed their story unfold. From friction to fondness, from silence to something that spoke volumes. At the entrance to the garden, ceremony was a photograph. A grainy security still of Maya from that first day, drenched and defiant in the company lobby. Beneath it, a small brass plaque. Read, "Kindness doesn't wash off. It leaves a mark." As she walked down the aisle, her hair loose, her eyes bright, Maya saw Aiden, waiting. He was in a simple gray suit, no tie, just open hands and soft, loving eyes. When they met at the altar, he leaned in and whispered, "Still think you don't belong here?" She smiled, her heart full. "I think I was meant to change what here means." And beneath a canopy of lantern light, with vows that needed no embellishment, Maya and Aiden stepped into their next chapter. Not as a CEO and an intern, not as a rumor and its resolution, but as 200 people who met in the chaos of a storm and chose always to walk forward together. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of resilience, truth, and unexpected love. Maya walked into her future not just with a resume and hope, but with a heart that never gave up. And she found a man who learned that true strength is leading with more than just logic. Together, they built not just a life, but a legacy of compassion. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the power of kindness in unexpected places, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. Because here, We believe the quietest moments often leave the loudest echoes. We'll see you in the next story.